It was a peaceful morning on the human colony of Tyrannes, a remote planet light-years from Earth. The sky was a bright blue, and the air was fresh with the scent of alien flowers that grew in colorful clusters across the landscape. Captain Noah Richards, a man who had seen the worst of the universe in his military career, was enjoying a rare moment of peace. He sat on the porch of his small home, sipping a cup of coffee while watching his daughter, Emily, play in the yard. Emily, just 10 years old, had inherited her father's determination and his curious spirit, often getting lost in books about faraway worlds. But today, it was the simple things that made her happy, the laughter of birds with wings that shimmered like stardust, and the warmth of the sun on her face. Noah's life had been quiet since he left the military. He had served in elite special forces for years, taking on missions that no one else could handle. But after the war had ended, he chose a quieter life, far from the chaos. Here, on Tyrannes, he could be a father to Emily and escape the ghosts of his past. It was everything he had ever wanted. But all of that was about to change in an instant. Without warning, the peaceful sky above them was torn apart by the roar of something unnatural. The ground shook as if a giant hand had slammed it, knocking both Noah and Emily off their feet. Noah immediately sprang to his feet, his soldier instincts kicking in. But what he saw next sent a chill down his spine. High above, in the sky, a massive fleet of alien ships descended upon the colony. The ships were sleek and dark, their surface covered in shifting metallic patterns, like something out of a nightmare. The Kaltari. Noah had heard stories of the Kaltari. A ruthless alien race with technology far beyond anything humans could imagine. Their ships were invincible, their weapons deadly, and their tactics merciless. He had hoped never to encounter them. But now, as the Kaltari ships began to bombard the colony from the sky, he knew their invasion was inevitable. Screams filled the air as buildings crumbled beneath the relentless fire of alien weapons. Noah's heart raced as he grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward the shelter. But before they could reach safety, a massive shockwave from the explosion sent them flying to the ground. Noah's vision blurred, and his head spun as he struggled to regain his bearings. Through the dust and smoke, Noah heard the sound of alien voices, cold, harsh, and unfamiliar. He turned, his body moving on autopilot, but there was nothing he could do. The Kaltari had already begun their assault on the colony's defenders, cutting them down with ruthless efficiency. Before Noah could react, a pair of alien soldiers appeared in front of him, their glowing weapons raised. He fought back with all his strength, but they overpowered him. A sharp blow to the back of his head knocked him unconscious. When Noah woke, the world around him was a blur. His body ached with pain, his vision was unclear, and he could barely move. Panic set in when he realized Emily was not by his side. He tried to call out for her, but his voice was hoarse, his throat dry. He crawled to his feet, struggling to stay conscious, but the sight before him took his breath away. The alien ships were now hovering above the colony, their beams of energy scanning every corner of the ruined settlement. The Kaltari had taken Emily. Noah's heart pounded as the weight of the situation hit him. His daughter, the only family he had left, was now in the hands of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. His mind raced with thoughts of what the Kaltari might do to her. The rumors he had heard about their cruel experiments, their brutal methods of extracting information from their prisoners, he couldn't bear the thought of what Emily might be enduring right now. He had failed to protect her. But something inside Noah snapped. He had trained for years to be the perfect soldier. He had survived battles that would break most men. He had faced death countless times and never flinched. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle. This was personal. His daughter was being held by the enemy, and he would stop at nothing to get her back. The Kaltari had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. Noah staggered to his feet, pushing through the pain. His mind, clouded with rage, focused on one thing, getting Emily back. He wasn't the same man who had once retired to a quiet life. The old Noah, the soldier, was still inside him, and he was about to wake up. He made his way through the ruins of the colony, trying to avoid detection. The Kaltari had set up a strong perimeter around the area, but Noah's enhanced senses, honed from years of combat, allowed him to move like a shadow. His mind worked quickly, analyzing the situation. He knew he had little time before the aliens took Emily somewhere he couldn't reach. His first priority was to find her. As he moved through the wreckage, he recalled the training he had received, the advanced technology that had been implanted in his body, and the deadly weapons he had once wielded. He had hoped never to use them again, but now he had no choice. The Kaltari had made their first mistake, they had taken his daughter. And they were about to make their second, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Noah's heart burned with the determination to rescue Emily. As he prepared to go after the alien invaders, he swore an oath, one that would not only change his life but also alter the fate of the entire colony. He would destroy the Kaltari. He would make them regret ever laying a hand on his daughter. The suspense in the air was thick, and the audience, knowing what's at stake, is left on the edge of their seats. Will Noah be able to save Emily? How far will he go to take down the alien invaders? And will he succeed, despite the overwhelming odds? The story has just begun, and the tension is only building. Noah awoke in the dim light of a broken-down shelter. His head throbbed, and his body ached with the aftermath of the brutal attack. But despite the pain, there was only one thought in his mind: Emily. His daughter, taken by the Kaltari, was still out there, and every second counted. His heart burned with the need to rescue her, but he couldn't rush blindly into enemy territory. He had to plan. He had to prepare. And above all, he had to remember who he really was. Noah sat up slowly, pushing himself through the haze of pain. His vision blurred for a moment, but the familiar, comforting presence of his military training came rushing back. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. His body was still recovering from the brutal assault, but his mind was sharp, calculating. He knew he didn't have time to waste. He needed to move. He needed to be ready for the battle ahead. As Noah went through the process of patching up his wounds with whatever supplies he could find, his mind wandered back to the past. The pain in his body faded as memories surfaced, memories of a life he thought he had left behind. Through a series of vivid flashbacks, the audience learns that Noah was no ordinary man. He wasn't just a retired soldier trying to live a quiet life. He was part of a highly classified and dangerous military program known as Project Titan. Years ago, when Noah was just a young recruit, he had volunteered for the program, not knowing what it truly entailed. The program was designed to enhance human soldiers, turning them into super soldiers with abilities far beyond those of normal men. The human body was augmented with cutting-edge technology, advanced AI was implanted directly into the brain, and each soldier was given the best weapons and training humanity could offer. The goal was to create the perfect weapon, something that could face any alien force, no matter how powerful. The military's vision was clear: to create a force that could defeat the Kaltari, who had been terrorizing human colonies across the galaxy. Noah had been one of the first to undergo the procedure. His strength, speed, and mental acuity were enhanced beyond the limits of human capability. He had become an unstoppable force on the battlefield. His senses were sharpened, his reflexes lightning fast, and his strategic mind was able to predict the enemy's movements before they even made them. But despite all the enhancements, the process was not without its toll. The side effects of the experiments were severe. The constant pain, the loss of freedom, and the cold, clinical nature of the program began to weigh on Noah's conscience. As he completed mission after mission, he became more and more detached from humanity. He was a weapon, nothing more. And though he succeeded in every mission, his heart grew cold, his sense of identity fractured. Eventually, Noah made a decision. He couldn't live this way anymore. He faked his death during a mission gone wrong, slipping away in the chaos and leaving the military behind. He disappeared into the far reaches of the galaxy, away from the eyes of those who had created him. He adopted a new name, Captain Noah Richards, and settled on Tyrannies with Emily, hoping to leave the past behind. He wanted nothing more than to be a father and live a peaceful life with his daughter. But now, the past had come crashing back into his life with the Kaltari's invasion. As Noah prepared to leave the shelter and take on the Kaltari, the memories of his training came flooding back. The AI implanted in his mind buzzed faintly, reminding him of the combat protocols that had once guided him in the field. He stood up, steadying himself. His body wasn't what it used to be, but it would have to be enough. The enhancements, though dulled by years of disuse, were still inside him. He wasn't the same man who had retired years ago, he was something more, something deadly. Noah rummaged through his belongings, finding the weapons he had hidden away when he first retired. A sleek, high-powered rifle. A small, portable cloaking device. Several grenades. His old combat knife. These weapons were far beyond anything the Kaltari could comprehend. The aliens were strong and their technology was advanced, but they had never faced anything like Noah. He had the perfect combination of human ingenuity, superhuman strength, and cutting-edge technology. With these tools, he would be able to infiltrate their ranks, take down their commanders, and rescue Emily. As he prepared for the mission, he realized just how much he had been living in denial. His quiet life on Tyrannies had been an illusion, momentary escape from the truth. The truth was that he was a soldier, and soldiers didn't get to retire. They didn't get to walk away from their responsibilities. They fought, no matter the cost. Noah activated the cloaking device, and the world around him seemed to disappear. He moved through the dark, ruined streets of the colony with practiced ease, each step bringing him closer to the Kaltari's stronghold. His senses were sharper now, his every movement calculated and deliberate. The cloak made him nearly invisible, blending seamlessly with the shadows. He was a ghost, a silent killer stalking his prey. As he moved, his mind shifted into full combat mode. His training kicked in. He ran through mental checklists of the weapons and equipment he had with him. He focused on his mission, to get Emily back, to take down the Kaltari, and to make them regret ever attacking his home. But even as he prepared for the coming fight, Noah knew that this wouldn't be easy. The Kaltari were formidable. Their fleet was massive, their weapons deadly. They had taken Emily, and Noah would make sure they paid for that. The battle would be long, the cost would be high, but in the end, Noah knew one thing for sure, he would not stop until he had his daughter back. The past had caught up with him, and there was no turning back now. Noah had become the weapon he had once been. And he was ready to use that power to destroy the Kaltari and save his daughter. The hunt was on. Noah moved silently through the dark corridors of the Kaltari base. The cloaking device wrapped around him like a second skin, rendering him nearly invisible to the naked eye. His mind was sharp, his senses heightened by the enhancements still coursing through his body. He was no longer just a man, he was a weapon, honed by years of military training and augmented with advanced technology. Every step was deliberate, every motion precise. He was a shadow in the night, moving with purpose and deadly intent. The Kaltari, with all their advanced technology and military superiority, were completely unaware of the danger creeping through their base. Their guards, heavily armored and armed with energy weapons, patrolled the hallways, oblivious to the presence of the most dangerous human alive. They had never encountered someone like Noah. They had never faced a soldier enhanced with the very best humanity could create. And they were about to pay the price for their ignorance. Noah's heart raced with the need to rescue his daughter, but he kept his emotions in check. This wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a war. The Kaltari had invaded his home, taken his daughter, and tortured her. He would make them regret every second of it. He moved swiftly, striking without hesitation. A Kaltari guard rounded the corner, and in one fluid motion, Noah grabbed him from behind, silencing the alien with a swift blow to the neck. The guard crumpled to the ground without a sound. Noah didn't even pause. He vanished into the shadows, his cloak flickering as he passed. The next guard was dealt with even faster. Noah could feel the adrenaline surging through him, the cold thrill of combat. He was in his element now, moving through the base like a ghost, taking down anyone who stood in his way. The Kaltari were no match for him. They were strong, yes, but they lacked the training and experience Noah had. His enhanced reflexes, augmented strength, and advanced weapons made him unstoppable. It was like hunting in the dark, and the Kaltari were the prey. But as Noah moved deeper into the base, he began to notice something. The Kaltari were starting to catch on. Their usual methods of dealing with intruders, alarm systems, patrols, and brute force, weren't working. Their security was failing, their guards were disappearing, and their systems were being bypassed with ease. Panic started to spread among the Kaltari soldiers. They began to search more frantically, their once calm demeanor replaced with nervousness. The high-tech weapons they wielded, capable of obliterating entire cities, didn't seem as intimidating now. They were beginning to realize that they weren't dealing with an ordinary intruder. Noah took advantage of their confusion, slipping past their defenses without breaking a sweat. But as he moved deeper into the heart of the base, the realization hit him: the more Kaltari he took down, the closer he got to the prison cells where Emily was being held. His daughter was here, somewhere in this labyrinth of steel and alien technology. And he would stop at nothing to find her. Meanwhile, deep within the prison, Emily was enduring unimaginable torment. The Kaltari had taken her for their experiments, probing her mind and body with their cruel instruments. They thought she was just a helpless human child, but they were wrong. The aliens underestimated her, just as they had underestimated her father. Emily had always been strong, even before the Kaltari had taken her. She had inherited her father's resilience, his unyielding will to survive. But now, as the aliens continued their brutal experiments, she felt something inside her awakening, a hidden strength she had never known she possessed. The pain, the fear, the isolation, it all seemed to fade as something deeper, something more powerful, began to surface. In the cold, sterile confines of the Kaltari cell, Emily's eyes burned with defiance. She clenched her fists, her small body trembling with effort as she fought against the restraints that held her. The aliens had tried to break her spirit, but they had underestimated her resolve. Emily wasn't just a victim, she was a survivor. And no matter what they did to her, she would never give up. The Kaltari scientists, who had been observing her with smug expressions, suddenly began to notice a change. Emily's heart rate spiked. Her breathing quickened. The faintest hint of a smile tugged at her lips. She was fighting back. Her mind was no longer clouded by fear. She had tapped into something primal, something beyond her years. She was no longer the helpless child they thought she was. As the Kaltari continued their experiments, they began to struggle with Emily. Their once precise instruments malfunctioned. The restraints that had held her in place seemed to weaken. It was as though the very technology they had used to control her was being overpowered by the strength of her will. The scientists exchanged confused glances, unsure of what was happening. They had never encountered anything like this before. The more they tried to hold her down, the more Emily fought back. Her hidden strength was becoming impossible to ignore. The Kaltari, usually so confident in their ability to dominate, were now faced with an unexpected challenge. Back in the heart of the base, Noah moved with increasing urgency. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he drew closer to the cell block. His mind raced with thoughts of Emily, his daughter, the one person he loved more than anything. The thought of her being tortured at the hands of the Kaltari made him want to tear the entire base down. He had to save her. He would save her. And then, just as he was about to break into the final corridor leading to the cells, something caught his attention. A signal, faint but unmistakable, a burst of energy emanating from the Kaltari's holding facility. It was coming from Emily's cell. She was resisting. She was fighting back. A surge of hope washed over Noah. His daughter, despite everything the Kaltari had done to her, was alive and strong. They were not as helpless as the Kaltari thought. Father and daughter, together, were a force to be reckoned with. The audience, now fully immersed in the story, feels the rising hope. Will Noah reach Emily in time? Will they be able to escape the Kaltari's grip? The suspense is unbearable, and the stakes are higher than ever. It's clear that the battle is far from over, and the real fight is just beginning. Noah moved through the Kaltari base with his heart racing, each step bringing him closer to his daughter. The distant echo of his footsteps seemed to reverberate in the silence of the base, as if the walls themselves were aware of the storm that was about to break loose. His mind focused solely on Emily, the image of her tortured and helpless running through his thoughts. He couldn't fail her, not now. She needed him. He finally reached the cell block. The corridor ahead was lined with heavy metal doors, each one concealing a different captive or experiment. But he didn't need to search, he knew where Emily was. His enhanced vision picked up on the faintest energy signature emanating from one of the cells. There, at the far end of the hallway, was her cell. His pulse quickened. Noah took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment he had been preparing for. His daughter was right behind that door. He was almost there. His hands were steady, his mind sharp, as he approached the cell. But just as he reached for the control panel to disable the lock, a sudden noise shattered the tension. A warning siren blared through the corridors, echoing off the metal walls. The Kaltari had discovered him. Noah's heart sank, but there was no time for regret. He had known this would happen. The Kaltari were too advanced, too powerful, to be caught off guard for long. He had to act quickly. He pulled a small device from his belt, activating a cloaking field to momentarily disappear from their sight. But the Kaltari were already closing in. Their advanced sensors had picked up his presence, and they were ready. Noah knew he had mere moments before they overwhelmed him. The door to the cell creaked open, revealing Emily, who was battered but very much alive. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her mouth opening to speak, but Noah held up a hand. No time for words. Noah. Emily whispered, her voice weak but full of relief. Not yet, he replied, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Stay back. He stood in front of her, his mind calculating the next steps. He had to fight his way out, but he couldn't let the Kaltari take Emily again. His enhanced senses were already picking up the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. He wasn't alone for long. The Kaltari were closing in fast, and they knew who he was. Suddenly, a voice boomed over the base's intercom system. Captain Noah Richards. We know who you are. Surrender now, and we will spare your daughter. Noah felt the familiar anger rise inside him, but he kept his cool. He had fought battles far more difficult than this, but this time, it was personal. They weren't just fighting against a super soldier, they were fighting against a father who would do anything to save his child. The first wave of Kaltari soldiers appeared from the shadows, their alien faces twisted in determination. They were armed with advanced plasma rifles, their glowing energy weapons humming with power. But Noah was faster. His enhanced reflexes kicked in, and he moved with lightning speed, dodging the first few shots before closing the gap. He charged at the nearest Kaltari soldier, grabbing him by the throat and lifting him off the ground. With a swift motion, Noah slammed the alien soldier into the wall, knocking him unconscious in one strike. Another Kaltari soldier fired a burst of plasma, but Noah was already behind him, his hand on the alien's weapon before it could fire again. He twisted the soldier's arm, disarming him and sending him crashing to the ground. But the Kaltari were relentless. They had numbers, advanced weapons, and an endless supply of reinforcements. As Noah continued to fight, the sounds of battle grew louder, the base shaking as explosions ripped through the corridors. He was unstoppable, but even he couldn't take on an entire army. In the midst of the chaos, something unexpected happened. A new voice, one that Noah recognized, echoed through the comms. "This is Bonner. I'm coming in to assist you, Captain." Noah's heart surged with a brief sense of relief. Bonner, his trusted ally from his days in the Super Soldier program, had arrived. Bonner was strong, capable, and one of the few people Noah trusted with his life. The backup was exactly what he needed to get Emily out safely. But just as he turned to signal Bonner's arrival, a burst of plasma fire pierced the air. There was no time to react. Noah's eyes widened in horror as Bonner, caught in the crossfire, collapsed to the ground. The Kaltari had ambushed them, cutting down their ally in an instant. "No!" Noah shouted, his voice raw with emotion. He fought through the pain in his chest, his fury growing as he watched Bonner's lifeless body hit the floor. The sight of Bonner's death only fueled his determination. He could not, would not, let this be the end. He had to keep fighting for Emily. He had to finish this. With a roar of rage, Noah pushed forward, charging through the Kaltari soldiers with a renewed fury. His enhanced strength, speed, and combat knowledge made him a deadly force, but now there was no room for hesitation. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for justice. He was fighting for revenge. As the Kaltari soldiers closed in from all sides, Noah ducked, spun, and fired his own advanced weapon. The plasma shots flew with deadly accuracy, cutting through the aliens' defenses like butter. His heart hammered in his chest, his mind focused on one thing, getting Emily out. She was still behind him, still alive, but they were running out of time. In that moment, with the weight of Bonner's death hanging over him, Noah made a vow: no matter what it took, he would take down the Kaltari. He would destroy their empire if that's what it took to make them pay for the pain they had caused his family. The final battle had just begun, and there was no turning back. Noah's heart raced as he finally released the last lock on Emily's cell. The door slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing his daughter, weak but alive. Her eyes widened when she saw him, her lips trembling as she whispered his name, "Dad, you came." Noah's eyes softened for a brief moment, but he couldn't afford to linger in the relief. The Kaltari were closing in. He knew time was running out. He stepped forward quickly, holding his hand out to Emily. "We don't have much time. We need to move, now." Emily nodded, her face a mixture of exhaustion and determination. As she stood up, her legs wobbled slightly, but she found her balance, her natural strength beginning to show despite the torture she had endured. Together, father and daughter moved into the corridor, silently but quickly. Noah's cloak technology concealed them from the alien cameras and sensors, but they knew it wouldn't keep them hidden forever. They had to act fast. The silence of the base was broken by the sudden whir of Kaltari battle units activating. A loudspeaker blared across the base, a cold voice echoing through the halls. "Intruder alert. Captain Noah Richards has been located. All units prepare for immediate engagement." Noah cursed under his breath. The Kaltari were throwing everything they had at them. The fight had only just begun. He pulled Emily closer to him as they sprinted down the narrow hallways, avoiding patrols and guards by using his cloaking tech. But the Kaltari weren't so easily fooled. The moment they were spotted by a camera, an alarm blared, and the sound of heavy boots echoed through the walls. Noah's enhanced reflexes kicked in as they moved through the complex. "Stay close to me," he said to Emily, his voice low and urgent. "We need to get to the extraction point." Emily nodded, her eyes scanning their surroundings. She had been trained to survive, and though the Kaltari had tortured her, she had gained something valuable, the ability to think on her feet, to adapt to any situation. She was strong, just like her father. They rounded a corner, and suddenly, a squad of Kaltari soldiers appeared ahead. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, and their eyes locked onto Noah and Emily. There was no time to turn back. Noah's mind raced. He quickly assessed the situation. The Kaltari were faster, stronger, and better armed, but they didn't have his experience. They didn't have the same level of training. He could see the way their eyes widened when they saw him, the famous Captain Noah Richards. The Kaltari knew he was no ordinary human. "Get ready," Noah whispered to Emily, his grip tightening on his weapon. In an instant, he activated his cloaking device, rendering them invisible to the Kaltari soldiers. They stumbled, confused, their eyes scanning the area. Noah silently moved behind one of the soldiers, his hand quickly snapping the alien's neck. Emily, ever the quick learner, followed his lead, taking out a soldier with a swift strike to the back of the head. They were moving fast now, pushing forward, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. But the Kaltari weren't done yet. The base was filled with traps, alarms, and reinforcements. Every step they took, the walls seemed to close in around them. "Noah! Look out!" Emily cried, pulling him back just as a Kaltari combat drone fired a burst of plasma at them. The blast scorched the wall behind them, and Noah could feel the heat of the blast sear his skin. Without missing a beat, Noah grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her into a side corridor, leading them into a dark room. They were momentarily out of sight, but the enemy was close. The sound of the Kaltari troops was growing louder. "This way," Noah whispered. He knew the layout of the base, and he led them through a series of maintenance tunnels, hoping to outmaneuver their pursuers. They emerged into a large chamber, where the Kaltari had gathered their most advanced combat units. Noah's eyes widened as he saw the robotic soldiers with reinforced exoskeletons, armed with energy cannons that could tear through walls. These were no ordinary soldiers, they were designed to hunt down and eliminate super soldiers like him. Emily looked at her father, her face pale but resolute. "Dad, we can't fight them all. There's too many." Noah looked around, his eyes scanning the room for any advantage. The walls were lined with alien technology, and he knew he could use that to his advantage. "Stay close, Emily," he said. "We'll make a run for it. On my signal, we go." As the Kaltari advanced, Noah pushed a button on his belt, activating a shockwave that disabled the nearest combat units. Sparks flew from the machinery, and the Kaltari soldiers staggered. Noah and Emily seized the opportunity, sprinting toward the far side of the room. The Kaltari fired their weapons, but Noah was faster. He moved with the precision of a predator, dodging blasts and using the environment to his advantage. The chase was intense, and the suspense was unbearable as they neared the exit. Just as they thought they were in the clear, a Kaltari soldier appeared, blocking their path. Noah's heart raced as he realized they were almost cornered. He pulled out his weapon, ready to fight his way out, but Emily had another idea. She grabbed a discarded alien grenade and hurled it toward the soldier, causing a massive explosion that threw the alien off balance. "Noah, let's go!" Emily shouted, and without hesitation, they sprinted through the smoke and debris, barely escaping the blast radius. They reached the exit to the hangar, where their escape shuttle was waiting. But the final obstacle was waiting for them, a massive Kaltari warship, hovering above the base, launching a final wave of firepower. They had no time to think. It was now or never. With seconds to spare, Noah and Emily leaped into the shuttle, and with a roar of its engines, it shot off into the sky, narrowly avoiding the alien fire. As they escaped the atmosphere, they looked down at the Kaltari base, now burning behind them. For the first time in what felt like forever, Noah let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. They had made it. But the war was far from over. Noah and Emily's shuttle shot through the air, narrowly avoiding the Kaltari's final barrage of fire. The base was burning behind them, but the sky above was far from clear. The Kaltari weren't giving up, not yet. As they ascended, the atmosphere above the planet began to shimmer with a strange energy. Suddenly, the entire sky was lit up by a series of massive explosions. The Kaltari had unleashed an orbital bombardment, sending a wave of destruction raining down upon the base they had just escaped from. "Noah, we have to keep moving," Emily screamed, her voice barely audible over the roar of the shuttle's engines. Her eyes were fixed on the chaos below as entire buildings were torn apart by the aliens' orbital cannons. But Noah wasn't looking at the base. He was staring ahead, his eyes narrowed, scanning for something. In the distance, a massive Kaltari flagship hovered above them, its enormous form blocking out the stars. The flagship's dark silhouette was illuminated by the flashes of explosions from the bombardment. "They're coming for us," Noah muttered under his breath. His jaw tightened with determination. Just as the shuttle rocketed toward the final escape point, the communication system buzzed to life. The voice of the Kaltari Supreme Commander echoed through the speakers, a cold, mechanical tone sending shivers down their spines. "Captain Noah Richards. You cannot escape," the voice said, dripping with malice. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. You are nothing but a human." Noah's grip on the controls tightened. He knew this wasn't just an empty threat. The Kaltari had something else planned. Seconds later, a massive Kaltari ship descended from the sky, a dark, imposing structure. It was the flagship, but it was more than just a ship, it was a deadly weapon. The ship's belly opened, and out came a towering figure. The Supreme Commander, enhanced by the Kaltari's advanced AI, was descending to the ground below. The Kaltari commander's body was a grotesque mixture of organic flesh and robotic parts, a fusion of human and machine. His eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and his mechanical limbs whirred as they moved. He was taller than any human, his strength amplified by the Kaltari's AI enhancements. His very presence was terrifying. Noah's eyes locked onto the Supreme Commander, his body instinctively tensing. This was it. The final battle. As the shuttle touched down on a nearby plateau, Noah didn't wait. He leaped out of the cockpit and onto the rocky ground, pulling Emily with him. They ran toward the cover of a nearby structure, but they knew it wouldn't last long. The Kaltari's advanced weaponry would find them soon enough. Behind them, the Kaltari commander's feet thudded against the ground, the sound echoing in the vast silence of the planet's surface. He was coming, and he was coming fast. "Emily, stay behind me," Noah said, his voice low and steady. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as the air around them seemed to grow heavier. But Emily wasn't just going to stay behind. She was stronger now. The Kaltari had broken her, tortured her, and tried to control her. But she had fought back. Her mind was no longer their prisoner. "I'm not afraid," she said, her voice firm. She gripped a blaster in her hand, her knuckles white with the pressure. Noah glanced back at her, his heart swelling with pride. "I know," he whispered. The first blast from the Kaltari commander's energy weapon hit the ground in front of them, sending a shockwave through the air. The ground cracked under the immense force, and debris flew in all directions. But Noah wasn't about to let this be their end. He lunged forward, using his enhanced speed to close the distance between him and the Kaltari commander. The Supreme Commander swung his mechanical fist, a massive, glowing gauntlet aimed straight for Noah. But Noah was faster. He dodged the strike with a well-timed roll, coming up behind the commander. His enhanced senses told him the commander's movements were being guided by the AI within. But even AI had its limitations. Noah could outsmart it. He pulled out a plasma blade from his belt, the weapon humming with power as he slashed it across the commander's exposed side. Sparks flew, and the Kaltari commander staggered back, his robotic limbs struggling to adjust. "Not bad for a human," the commander growled, his voice a mix of mechanical distortion and rage. He turned, eyes blazing with fury, and his next attack was even faster. A burst of energy shot from his arm, narrowly missing Noah. Emily didn't hesitate. She ran to her father's side, firing her blaster at the commander. Her shots were precise, hitting the weak spots in the commander's armor. But the AI-enhanced body adapted quickly, shifting to avoid her shots. "We need to end this," Noah muttered. He knew they couldn't keep dodging the commander's attacks. The Kaltari's supreme leader was strong, but Noah's human will was even stronger. The battle raged on, a brutal contest of strength, speed, and intellect. Noah's enhanced abilities gave him the edge, but the commander's technological enhancements made him a formidable opponent. They exchanged blows, each strike sending shockwaves through the ground. As the fight neared its climax, Noah saw an opening. The commander's AI had grown reckless, overestimating its power. With a final surge of energy, Noah launched himself at the commander, slashing with his plasma blade. This time, the strike hit its mark, right through the commander's core. The Supreme Commander's body sparked violently, his mechanical limbs twitching before he collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The AI inside him malfunctioned, and the once imposing figure was no more than a heap of wreckage. The battle was over. Noah stood over the fallen commander, breathing heavily, his body battered but victorious. Emily rushed to his side, her eyes full of relief. "You did it," she said, her voice full of awe. Noah smiled, his heart still racing. "We did it," he corrected, glancing at the sky above. The Kaltari fleet was retreating, the war was nearly over, and the Earth was safe once more. But the fight for humanity's survival had just begun. The final battle was over, but the fight for humanity's future was just beginning. As Noah and Emily stood on the scarred ground of the Kaltari base, they knew they had to escape before the enemy could regroup. The Kaltari fleet had been shattered, and their forces were in disarray. The once proud aliens had underestimated the human spirit, and now they were forced to retreat in disgrace. Noah and Emily, battered but unbroken, made their way to a hidden hangar on the outskirts of the base. Their shuttle was waiting, ready to take them back to safety. As they climbed into the cockpit, Noah looked at his daughter, his heart swelling with pride. Emily was no longer the scared girl who had been taken by the Kaltari. She was strong, not just physically, but emotionally too. The girl who had once been broken was now a warrior, forged in the crucible of pain and fear, ready to stand by her father's side. "We're not done yet," Noah said quietly, his voice full of determination. Emily nodded. She knew this wasn't just about escaping, it was about sending a message to the Kaltari, and to every other alien race out there. Humanity was no longer weak. They had learned, adapted, and fought back. They had survived. The shuttle lifted off the ground with a loud roar, soaring into the sky as the Kaltari ships retreated, their once mighty fleet now a shadow of its former self. The stars outside the cockpit's window seemed to sparkle with the promise of a future free from alien oppression. But it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rebuilding, about standing tall against any force that threatened the peace of the galaxy. As they traveled toward the human fleet, which was waiting in orbit around the planet, Noah and Emily exchanged a quiet glance. The journey had been long, filled with pain, loss, and uncertainty. But now, they were going home. They had fought and won, and nothing would ever be the same again. "Do you think they'll come back?" Emily asked, her voice quiet as she gazed out at the vast expanse of space. Noah looked out at the fading Kaltari fleet in the distance, now a group of ships in disarray, retreating into the black void of space. "I don't know," he replied honestly. "But we'll be ready. And we'll never back down." He turned to her, his eyes full of emotion. "You've grown so much, Emily. Not just in strength, but in courage. You were always my little girl, but now you're a warrior." Emily smiled, her eyes glinting with a newfound confidence. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. Your training, your love, they made me stronger. You always said I had a fire inside me. I think I finally found it." The shuttle docked with the human fleet, and as Noah and Emily disembarked, they were met with cheers. The soldiers and crew aboard the ships had heard of their victory, and they greeted them as heroes. But for Noah and Emily, this was not the end, it was a new beginning. As the two walked down the ramp, side by side, Noah glanced at Emily. His daughter had become so much more than he ever imagined. She was a symbol of everything they had fought for, a future where humanity stood united, unafraid, and ready to face whatever came next. Noah placed a hand on her shoulder. We've proven something important today. We've proven that we're not just survivors. We're fighters. And if anyone dares threaten us again, they'll regret it. Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a strength he had never seen before. We'll face them together, Dad. Nothing will break us. As they walked through the corridors of the fleet's command center, their bond was clear to everyone around them. Father and daughter, united by a shared mission, had become an unstoppable force. They had faced the Kaltari together, and they had won. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that humanity would never bow to anyone, no matter how advanced or powerful they might be. The story of Noah and Emily's bravery spread quickly through the fleet, becoming a symbol of hope for every human soldier, every citizen, and every family. The Kaltari had been defeated, but they were only one enemy among many that would come in the future. And Noah knew that humanity's fight was far from over. But now, they were ready. They were stronger than ever before. And as long as Noah and Emily stood side by side, they knew that humanity's future was secure. The final emotional moment of the story comes when Emily, looking at her father with a mix of admiration and gratitude, speaks from her heart. Dad, I'm not just your daughter anymore. I'm your equal. You've made me who I am today. And I'll never forget what you did for me. Noah smiled, his eyes glistening with pride. You always were my equal, Emily. You just didn't know it yet. And now, you do. As they looked out at the stars, knowing that their homecoming marked a new chapter in humanity's story, they made a silent vow, no matter what challenges the future held, they would face them together. The bond between father and daughter would be unbreakable, and humanity would stand united against any threat, ready to defend their future, their freedom, and each other.